Fireside Chat with David Bishop, partner, Brick Meets Click, and Mark Fairhurst, VP Marketing at Mercatus. Good to see you again.
As always, Mark, good to see you, my man.
So we are back. We are back with another monthly insights around the U.S. eGrocery shopper. This is the November update, November 2022. David, can you let the audience know what are we seeing in terms of inflation? What is inflation doing to change e-grocery shopper behavior?
Well, Mark, I think one area that we can see based on the ongoing research is it's starting to constrict the spending online. We see that in
Mm-hmm.
lower average order values in the core channels. Groceries down, mass is essentially flat. We can see the effects of inflation possibly on dampening demand slightly when we measure or look at average order frequency. And again, that's down year over year. We see those down trends, primarily in grocery right now, not so much
Mm-hmm.
in mass, but that's more the flight to value. And then we also see it in the appeal of shopping online. I mean, there is a cost associated with shopping online. It does cost more, depending on how you look at it. And we have fewer households going online across all the segments. And that's probably another indication of where inflation is having its effect or impact on the way people shop for groceries and specifically online.
Yeah, like I know here on the local news, just the other day, looking at in-store grocery prices up on average 8 to 10% for fresh product, maybe a little less for center aisle. So I can imagine that the impetus to buy online, you're seeing a greater stress between the convenience of online and what the consumer's pocketbook is willing to bear.
Yeah, I think if you look at inflation, which at the time of this recording, Mark, November has not been released. It's another week away. While we expect the inflation numbers overall and within the grocery related categories to come down slightly, I mean, we're still at elevated levels. I mean, last month we were almost 8% on overall, and food away from home was over 12. So when you put that in contrast to average hourly earnings, if you look at the Fed Reserve, they have a resource out of the St. Louis branch that's showing wage rates growing maybe year over year about 5%. So wages aren't keeping up with inflation, so reduced purchasing power, and as a result, consumers have to find ways to conserve that cash. They still have to pay their mortgage or their rent. They still have to pay their utilities, so they have the heat. Um, and grocery is insulated to some degree because it's a staple, but within that category, there still are, discretionary like purchases relative to, trading up or down in the brands or in some of the indulgent categories that are more impulsive. So again, all those things taken in consideration, we can understand why there is some overhang on grocery spending as we continue to, deal with this persistent inflation.
And who are the perpetual winners in this inflationary period in terms of retailers? And where do you see the swings
Well,
happening?
yeah, I think in general you would say value, which would include hard discount. But I think what our numbers are also showing is that while that may be true to a degree, mass and specifically within mass, Walmart is
Mm-hmm.
really the primary beneficiary. I mean, one of the reasons why Walmart maybe has a little bit of a advantage over the hard discounters like Aldi is that they do have a slightly more appealing aspect to upper demographic or higher demographics, whereas Aldi's still kind of making their way up there, although they have a great assortment and offering. So I think what we continue to see is mass benefits really because of its competitive position in the marketplace, that they are seen as the low price leader, the everyday low price leader in most markets that they serve.
And related to mass, where do you think Target went wrong in their latest numbers?
Well, I mean, Target's less reliant on grocery to drive their overall business. So
Right.
as as a consequence, they have a lot of more exposure to the discretionary categories, whether that's home furnishings, whether that's clothing and apparel. So I think in that regard, you need to keep that in mind. I think, they continue to execute their omni-channel strategies extremely well, but, their customer is probably very similar to the grocery customer. And, everyone's looking to stretch that buck today. So, Target is not positioned at the same price points as Walmart. So Target, to a degree, is feeling similar effects as conventional grocers would be.
Interesting that you note that, because previously, we've talked about using pricing as a mechanism to encourage customers to buy on first party channels, to have variable pricing in that scenario. Do you think that strategy is going to be put on hold or tempered somewhat because regional grocers are feeling the pressure to compete on that key variable, which is cost?
I don't expect there to be a significant shift in the practice of marking up online products within conventional grocers or regional grocers today, Mark. As well as I do, there are regional grocers who have been quite successful online with a bifurcated pricing strategy where their online prices are 3 or 5% above in store. And at the end of the day, they made a decision that that was the right thing for their business. And of course, it's not the only component of their strategy. They're doing many other things to support that position, and they're doing quite well. Now, the issue is you can't just look at pricing in isolation and say, should we do that? But rather, within the broader set of activities that we're going to consider within our strategy, how do we do it? I think that we are relatively, considered proponents of a bifurcated price for conventional grocers, partly because their consumer is shopping with them online for other reasons other than cost, although that is changing. It had been historically more around what I want to buy in terms of assortment. And today, cost is becoming more important. But that's not to say it's simply about the price of the product, but rather the combined effect of when you buy products and include all the added explicit costs, what's the total cost of using the service? And again, it's not in kind of a vacuum where you're looking at just online versus in store. There could be some consumers who are looking to trade down from or trade from delivery to pickup. But again, some of the factors that would cause someone to maybe be motivated to do that would include concern for contracting a virus, whether it's RSV, the influenza, or COVID. So again, I think, online is a higher cost to serve. Retailers understand that. A very few number of retailers have elected to pursue a markup strategy on the first party sites in addition to those explicit fees. Is that turning people away from online? I don't believe it is necessarily in the near term. If we were to compare that concept to the third-party marketplaces, we still see a lot of opportunity in the spread between what the third-party marketplace offers those products for, inclusive of the service charges and fees, and what the first party can do. So I think there's plenty of room for the retailer to get some additional margin dollars through bifurcating their pricing strategy online versus in store.
And when you're looking at the report as a whole and subsequent reports, what's the real benefit to a regional grocer in using this information?
It's seeing the whole picture. And I think a long time ago I may have talked about the 7 blind people feeling the elephant, all from different parts, and then describing what the elephant looks like to them based on what they felt. And that's somewhat the position that we find regional grocers in. They may be in the West in a very small pocket that's performing different than the rest of the country. They may be in a more suburban area where the way people shop is different than what we see in the urban areas. So by getting the report and looking at that, we're looking at a very macro view, the total U.S., and
Right.
we are then segmenting that macro view by market type, large, medium, small. And we are further looking at the market by fulfillment method. And each of these kind of filters or slices, if you will, just gives the retailer one more way to benchmark their business, to raise questions about, not only how do we compare, but how can we improve, right? By looking outside our business, we can see what may be working, and then, wondering why that is. So that's really interrogating the insights. So I think from that standpoint, the report serves as one more data point to kind of paint that picture, complementing all the other data points that they're reading on a frequent basis.
Very good, David. Let me ask you, I got one more question before we go. If you're looking into your crystal ball, what are you anticipating going forward into 2023, since this is almost the end of the year?
Yeah, I think 2023, just given where we are with the online business today, where we've seen the the performance trending, and knowing what we're anticipating in terms of the economic environment, I think 2023 is going to be a hard year on a kind of a comparable basis to lap 2022. It's not to say there's no prospect of growth. It's just that we're going to have to be a little smarter about how we pursue it. We're going to have to be a little more deliberate in how we deploy that capital, which is costing more. So we would anticipate, going forward, growth is going to come more conservatively, and really won and fought primarily through executing the sound strategy.
Awesome. David, thanks as usual. And folks, until next time, it's Mark Fairhurst with David Bishop. And we look forward to bringing you an update next month.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, David.